So my name's Jodi Findlay. I am a musician, or aspiring musician from Mid-Calder, and I grew up as an only child in a working class household, so got a lot of different stories about things like, what it takes to have to try and get yourself to that kind of stage, on a stage. I did a lot of drama growing up, and I think that's kind of what took me to the point where I'm at of actually being able to get up on a stage and sing, because for so long I didn't ever think I would sing in front of anyone. I was always really a lot of stage fright and stuff, so doing the drama, it was like you were being someone else. I struggle a lot with anxiety and always have from a really young age, and I think a lot of that is from having a single mum and being scared that I wasn't going to have her, if that makes sense. So for me to go from a child that would cry every time my mum dropped me off at nursery to going on a stage and singing in front of people and doing it with some element of confidence, I think I'm quite proud of what I've managed to achieve. I started gigging in 2019 properly. I did a few here and there, but literally shat it and couldn't do it. And I think the first one was 2017, and I did it at Party in the Park. And I was just a nervous wreck, and I've got all the videos to remind myself of how bad I was. And it just put me off, and I thought, I don't think this is for me, I don't think I can do it. And then 2018, I think I tried again, and I went to an open mic by myself and was just like, if this goes wrong, then no one else will see, and I never have to think about it again, and I'm not going to have any videos. And I went, and I actually had a really good time. It was a really good experience. It was at Woodland Creatures in Edinburgh, and I literally just went on the bus myself and was like, I took my ukulele and was just like, I'm just going to play a couple of original songs, and I made a few friends, and it was a really nice experience. So then I started properly gigging in 2019, and that's where I've got involved in the West Lothian music scene. And I managed to gig for a little while until obviously everything shut down, so I've made some really good friends. I have a band called SILVI, which is just myself and one of my best pals, Cameron, at the moment, and I sing and write the songs, and then he plays guitar and also drums, but when we're performing it's just drums, and then we've got like a backing track doing the rest of the instruments. So we ended up being one of the only Scottish finalists in a worldwide competition. Thousands of applicants, and we got down to the final 16. So that was a really good experience, because we didn't think we would even get to the top 100, and then we got through to the top 100 and we were like, do you know what, whatever happens from here, we can say we got to the top 100, a little tiny band from West Lothian. But what was great about that is that it was a £10,000 prize, and it kind of got me thinking about how that money I would never see otherwise. And I think that's where I kind of started thinking a lot more about how the kind of class difference and the gap between working class musicians and musicians that £10,000 really isn't. It's an investment, but it's not a great deal of money. I mean, money's probably the biggest one. I think definitely anxiety to begin with initially, trying to even get to the point of putting myself out there. Anxiety was the worst one. Panic attacks before it, being sick before I went on stage, in the toilets, just stuff like that, like really bad, and thinking, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do this. Am I going to have to just work a job that I don't really want to do for the rest of my life, because I feel like I love singing so much, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually pursue it because of who I am and because of my struggles. And that was a lot to have to contend with at the beginning, but once I finally pushed through that, and it took so long of just pushing through and being miserable, and every time, and even during and after the set as well, but just being like, if you keep going, if you keep persisting, it will get easier. And eventually now, I can go on stage and I'm fine, but I still have nerves, but it's not to the extent that it was. But mainly money, I think, in terms of once you finally get on the bandwagon, so to speak. actually trying to put these things into motion, trying to hire photographers to make it look good, because ultimately it needs to look good for people to even click on it in the first place. I would love to tour. I would love to see a bit of the world doing something that I love. I think I would really like to, not necessarily sell out arenas, but sell out really intimate venues with people who really connect with the music, as corny as it sounds. But the stuff I write it with a lot of personal kind of vulnerability, and I think there's only going to be a certain amount of people who relate to it, and even if they don't relate to it, maybe connect with it in some other way, that they are kind of listening to someone else's story. So I think I would like to be able to sell out little intimate venues and have a small fan base of people, not even fans necessarily, but a small base of people who enjoy what I'm doing, and enables me to be able to do it as a full-time job as opposed to a job that I'm not as passionate about. Liberation. I think it gives me a completely new lease of life. Electric, because I think you come off stage and you've got this completely different aura about yourself. And I think I'll go with vulnerable, because again, you're singing lyrics. Sometimes the people that you've wrote them about can be in the audience, and that can be quite, you can be quite tentative about that, but I think that is the human condition, and that is what you're trying to do. You're trying to explain the way you feel, and we all have these feelings, so it's cool to be able to put it into something like art in a song. I would say recognise where you need to make changes in yourself before throwing yourself into the deep end, because I think as much as I did kind of try chuck myself in, it was a lot of tough love and it was a lot of struggle. I think I would have maybe worked on myself a bit more in terms of trying to use different techniques to calm myself and stuff before I went on stage, because I was really nervous when I was on stage. So I would say if you have that kind of nervous disposition, try and seek help and look to someone who can maybe help with that before you put yourself out there, because if I had maybe done that, then I maybe wouldn't have had to wait from 2017 to 2019 to properly gear myself up to do it again. But yeah, I think ultimately just try not let anything, we're all going to die anyway, so just try and do your best, and if it doesn't work, then people will forget about it in a couple of weeks. As a woman, it's a big challenge, just walking into a room and being one of the only females in the room. It's very intimidating sometimes. Coming here today with you two, I don't feel that energy, but a lot of the time you do really feel like you're kind of disregarded in a lot of ways. And I said this in a different thing, but sometimes when I think it starts at the root of behind the scenes in the music industry. So for example, when you're at an after party, nobody knows who you are because you were on at 7 p.m. and nobody shows up for the 7 p.m. slot. And I think that is backing into the roots of it. So in terms of the bookers, they always put the girl on at the beginning because they don't think they're going to sell out the final bit. It's also down to the audience and the people consuming the music. They're willing to support the bigger acts but not the smaller acts, and by large a lot of the smaller acts are the female acts. And then as well, when you do go to these parties or whatever, or even at the gig itself, people just think you're someone's girlfriend, and I think that is where it kind of needs to dismantle in a lot of ways, because you're there because you're there in your own right, but nobody knows because they never bothered to show up. And then at things like the parties and stuff, they don't think to pass you the guitar, or oh, why don't you sing, or things like that when they're maybe doing their little jam or whatever. You never get past the guitar, so to speak. And I think that's kind of eliminating your voice again, because you feel kind of quite inferior and you're like, well, there's no point, I'll just go into my shell because nobody's going to listen anyway. And it makes you feel like they don't care what you have to say. or how you sound. So yeah, I think it starts at the root of it. It's not just necessarily looking at these like festival bills for Reading and Leeds. It's not there. It starts much closer to home than that, and everybody has a responsibility, I think, to make that change. Going on a stage and singing in front of people and doing it with some element of confidence, I think I'm quite proud of